Oh yeah, medieval videos. That means YouTube is not going to recommend this to my subscribers as they always do. But this is called The Greatest King That Never Was by History of the Medieval World. Is a video on Edward the Black Prince, who I don't really know too much about outside of his caricature in Knight's Tale starring Heath Ledger. Which I love that movie. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not sure really how historically accurate it is. I don't care. It's a good time. It has Chaucer in it, and he's butt-ass naked when you meet him. It's just so fun. Such a fun movie. The jousting looks so good. I think the jousting still holds up to this day, 25 years later. If you've not seen A Knight's Tale, you gotta see it. I will never not shill for that movie. But I don't really know much about the real historical Black Prince, so we are outside of my personal knowledge, expertise regarding the medieval world. Let's go ahead and dive in here and learn.
Edward of Woodstock, known to history as the Black Prince, was the archetype of the medieval
Oh, he has a very British voice, like a very, very British narrator sort of voice.
warrior prince, chivalric, charismatic, and lethal. Though he never ascended the English throne, his military prowess and personal legend have echoed through the centuries. Born in 1330 into the royal house of Plantagenet, he was the eldest son of Edward III.
Which, fun fact, I'm actually reading a book right now on the knight William Marshall, supposedly the greatest knight ever or something. And he served like 5 English kings. And it said in that book, the historian that wrote it says that the name Plantagenet was actually not used contemporarily. It wasn't used until, I can't remember the year he gave, but I think it was probably after the Plantagenets were gone. I want to say maybe. Was it that? Or maybe it was by the 14th century here. I can't remember. But I do remember that at least early on in the 12th, around the 12th century when William Marshall was living, they were not, I guess they did not call themselves Plantagenet. They called themselves, they were the Angevin dynasty. I think that's what he said. Hope I'm not mixing up things from this book.
III and Philippa of Hainault. As heir apparent, Edward was expected not just to inherit a crown, but to secure and expand England's dominion by force if necessary. This is the story of a prince forged in the crucible of the 100 Years' War, celebrated for his victories, feared for his fury, and remembered for a legacy that casts both light and shadow. Edward's upbringing coincided with a period of renewed dynastic ambition. His father, Edward III, laid claim to the French crown in 1337, initiating what would become the 100 Years' War, a prolonged series of conflicts between the kingdoms of England and France. From an early age, Edward was immersed in the values of chivalric kingship, loyalty, piety, honour, and above all, martial excellence. His education encompassed languages, Latin, theology, and heraldry, but his most intensive training was military. At just 7 years old, he was created Earl of Chester.
Alright, shit, okay. Fucking, when I was 7 years old, I was playing Super Smash Brothers. The Wii one, I think it came out by then. Cannot remember.
1 year later, he was named Prince of Wales, an explicit recognition of his future kingship. These were not merely ceremonial titles. They reflected Edward III's intention to use his son not just as an heir, but as an instrument of war. The first great test of Edward's military capacity came at the Battle of Crecy in 1346.
When he was just 11 years old. No, he was what, probably 16?
Then aged 16, he was given command of the vanguard of the English army during one of the most critical engagements. The English force, composed roughly 12,000 men, faced a numerically superior French army under King Philip VI, possibly double in size. Edward's role was far from symbolic. He fought in the thick of the conflict, commanding longbowmen,
Hold up. Look at that dumpy. Look at that cake. Yeah. Hey.
infantry, and dismounted knights. According to the chronicler Jean Froissart, at one point in the battle, his position came under severe pressure. A request for reinforcement was sent to Edward III, who replied, "Let the boy win his spurs."
Such a... Ooh. That's a quote. Let the boy win his spurs. That's also... I think that also... That says not just... I think there's a lot of ways we can take this. We can take this quote both from not only just a personal relationship between father and son here, but also culturally, right? The sort of heightened militarism of the time, or heightened view of military recognition, like military success, how that ties like to your own advancement and how people view you in this society. With that quote, we can see that there. But then I also can kind of, I think, get a little bit of a hint at the relationship between Edward III and the Black Prince, and that the way I interpret this is Edward III has the utmost faith in his son to pull through here. So like I think this says, I think it says a lot about the like 6 words here. If they are like the actual words that Edward III did say, I think it says so freaking much of their relationship.
The English victory at Crécy was total. French losses were catastrophic, and the English longbow, deployed in structured volleys, proved decisive. The young prince's reputation soared. He had earned his place among the great captains of Europe. Following Crécy, Edward played a key role in the siege of Calais, which resulted in the city's capitulation after 11 months. Calais became a vital English enclave on the continent, held until 1558. In 1348, Edward III founded the Order of the Garter, a chivalric order inspired by Arthurian legend and dedicated to the cult of knighthood. Edward of Woodstock was named its first knight. These honours reflected more than lineage. They marked the emergence of a prince whose image was carefully cultivated to represent the ideals of medieval kingship. Edward's most celebrated military achievement came at Poitiers in 1356, during a campaign deep into French territory. Leading an English force of perhaps 6,000 men, Edward was confronted by a much larger French army led by John II. Outnumbered and cut off from reinforcements, Edward chose to stand and fight. He positioned his archers on high ground, used natural terrain to control the battlefield, and deployed dismounted knights to form a solitary infantry corps. After hours of intensive fighting, English archers devastated the French cavalry, and the French army collapsed. More astonishingly, Edward's men captured King John II himself, along with his youngest son Philip. This was a profound humiliation for France, and a diplomatic windfall for England. The French king was brought to London and held in honourable captivity for 4 years.
4 years? Damn, dude!
A ransom of 3 million was eventually negotiated.
Damn.
An extraordinary sum, and the Treaty of Bretigny in 1360 formalised England's temporary territorial gains. Edward's personal conduct after Poitiers was praised widely. He reportedly treated John with generosity and chivalry, reinforcing his image as the ideal medieval knight.
I do want to say that this was an expectation, like, across the board within medieval society of treating fellow knights respectfully like this. Like, it was very taboo to not treat someone of your standing in such a way. Like in the book that I'm currently reading with William Marshall, which is sort of right at the start of this idea of what we see as a chivalric code that we tack on to the whole broad medieval period, medieval knight uh, concept. Um, uh, William Marshall was with Eleanor of Aquitaine at one point when there was some sort of violence happening down in um, southern France that I am blanking on the name of the province exactly. And as they were, as William Marshall with some others were taking Eleanor back to her some nearby castle or whatever. They were ambushed, and they could not get all of their armor on right away or whatever. Well, the knight who was essentially the top knight in this group, who I cannot remember the name of, but he was like a cousin or maybe an uncle even to William Marshall or something. I cannot remember the castle he ruled, but essentially he ends up getting killed in the fight, and that sends not just a panic through the knights and William Marshall on the side of Eleanor of Aquitaine, but it sent a panic through the people ambushing them. Like, that was not supposed to happen. We are fucked now because, well, they just did, like, it was, you wanted to take a knight, and not only was it in your best interest to take a knight because of money reasons, but also because of that societal expectation of treatment regarding knights, the people in power. So yeah, but yeah, they were. I definitely agree that they would them crafting this image of Edward of the Black Prince here to be the most perfect medieval knight also makes sense though. Like, right, I'm not. Two things can be true here, right? I can say at the same time that this image regarding being crafted here for the Black Prince was an expectation across the board, but that does not mean that it was necessarily true across the board in medieval Europe. People broke taboo probably plenty of times.
In 1362, Edward was granted the Principality of Aquitaine by his father and relocated his court to Bordeaux. Here, he attempted to transition from general to governor. However, the region's fractious politics, along with Edward's own temperament, complicated matters. His administration struggled to extract taxes from a resentful Gascon nobility.
I think it was the Gascon. I think this is the same region in which William Marshall was ambushed when escorting Eleanor of Aquitaine.
And unrest simmered. The prince's fortunes declined further following the ill-fated Castilian intervention of 1367. Edward supported Pedro I of Castile, known as the Cruel, against his rival Henry of Trastamara. Though Edward won the Battle of Najera, the campaign drained his finances and exposed his troops to disease. More critically, his health, which had already been deteriorating, collapsed. Edward's exact illness remains unknown. Chroniclers describe weight loss, chronic fatigue, and severe gastrointestinal symptoms.
So, dysentery?
Theories range from dysentery to tuberculosis or Crohn's disease.
I mean, if we look at I feel like the wider context of what he just went through, right? Castilian invasion, and he just said
his troops to disease.
Troops to disease. Sounds like perhaps conditions for secure and safe food was perhaps not the best, which I think is where and dysentery comes through the water. I don't think it comes through any other way aside from the water. And I think a fairly common means of which the nobility would die would be dysentery, because their diet kept them safe from kind of a lot of other issues or whatever, and the access to wealth and stuff, and being separated from the common people allowed them to be protected from other sort of diseases and viruses. But dysentery was something that could affect everyone, because everyone's got to drink, water. Especially on a military campaign. I think this was very common. Oh well, and of course, when I say very common, I'm speaking perhaps a little bit hyperbolistic. I don't really know how common it was, but like, I mean, if you play Crusader Kings, you get dysentery. But this is my guess. This is my number one guess. Sometimes the most obvious answer can just be the most obvious when it comes to history. TB. I think if it was TB, um, I think they would have mentioned the cough, right? I think TB always comes with a cough and blood comes out from the lungs. So I think if it was TB, I think we'd pretty solidly know it was TB.
tuberculosis,
Now, it being Crohn's disease, 'cause I think Crohn's disease is the one that is most commonly, it was often is the disease that's often attributed to Alfred the Great, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while. That's a longer form sort of illness, isn't it? So I think this would be something that, if it was Crohn's disease, we would have heard earlier on in his life, from contemporaries, perhaps some slight mentions of it, maybe, because and maybe even some sort of attempts at connection to the Anglo-Saxon past, um, and comparing him to Alfred the Great maybe would have been used. I don't know. Actually, no, because Alfred the Great really wasn't a well-known figure until, really, I want to say maybe the 1700s. Can't remember. But I'm going with dysentery.
or Crohn's disease. Despite his condition, Edward led a punitive expedition against
Just because also the way it sounds with how perhaps rapid his decline was makes me think dysentery.
the city of Limoges in 1370 after it defected to the French. The siege ended with the city's sack. According to Froissart, as many as 3,000 civilians were killed, though modern historians question the accuracy of that figure, arguing it may have been exaggerated for dramatic or moral effect. However, after his death, a requiem mass was held for him in France. Would the French celebrate a man who had slain 3,000 of their own? Nonetheless, the event tarnished Edward's chivalric reputation. The prince who had once exemplified honor on the battlefield was now seen by some as a symbol of vengeance and cruelty. Edward returned to England in 1371, physically broken and politically sidelined.
Ooh, okay, so he's still alive. Then maybe not dysentery. It might be Crohn's disease then. Okay, you know what? Maybe I am changing mine because I think dysentery. I don't think that lasts for years. I think that's something that's like pretty short, and if you're gonna die from it, you're gonna die like it's like once you get dysentery, you're not living for years after you've gotten dysentery. You're gonna be shitting a lot, and you're gonna die. If you do, or you live. So I'm now leaning towards Crohn's disease then.
He withdrew from public life, though he remained active in court matters intermittently. In 1376, he supported reforms in Parliament against powerful court factions, showing a final flash of political agency. He died later that year, on June the 8th, 1376,
Oh yeah, Crohn's disease is my final guess.
aged 45. He predeceased his father by a year.
Oh damn.
His death left the succession in the hands of his 10-year-old son, Richard of Bordeaux, who would ascend the throne as Richard II the following year. Edward was buried in Canterbury Cathedral near the shrine of Thomas a Becket, a deliberate choice that signalled his piety and prestige. His tomb bears an inscription that reads, "Such as thou art, sometime was I. Such as I am, such shalt thou be."
Whatever the fuck that means.
The nickname Black Prince only emerges posthumously from the 16th century onwards. Its origins remain debated. Some suggest it referred to the colour of his armour, others believed it alludes to his ferocity in battle. Despite his early death, Edward's reputation endured. Chroniclers like Froissart and modern historians such as Jonathan Sumption regard him as a military prodigy, perhaps one of England's most gifted battlefield commanders. Yet his legacy is a paradox, a prince who won glory but not a crown, who embodied both the ideal of knighthood and its darker realities. Edward of Woodstock lived in an age where kingship was measured in blood and steel. He may never have worn the crown of England, but his victories shaped a generation, and his memory still lingers in stone, in song, and in the long shadow of war. He was the prince who might have been king. He was the Black Prince.
This was a good fucking video, dude. It was a good fucking video. I really liked it a lot. I liked it a lot. Damn. I'm gonna watch more from this channel down the line, man. Oh, man. Either in my own time, or you fuckers are watching it with me. Damn. This was really good. This was really good. I am definitely subscribing to this dude now. History of the Medieval World. Fuck yeah, dude. This is so good. Damn. Oh, I got no notes. I got no notes. Yeah. No, I got nothing else to say. This was good. That was The Greatest King That Never Was video. Relatively short video on Edward the Black Prince. Oh man,